Hey, it's Dan, and welcome to Unified Gaming. So in this one, I want to break down my Magicka Warden PvP build for the current patch. This thing embraces all of the changes in update 43, and we have more damage, more sustain, and more defense than ever before. It is rather complicated though with how this is set up with both the attributes and also the gear loadout, so do pay close attention, and I have tested this extensively over on the live tab on YouTube so you can see the gameplay there, and there will be a dedicated video too, so do subscribe to see that too. As always, I want to say a massive thanks to all of the YouTube and Patreon members who get exclusive content, early access and much more. If you want to support myself and help the channel keep going, there's details down below. But with this one, what are we doing? Race wise, you want to be a Dark Elf. Dark Elf, in my opinion, is the best because we are still a vampire and this flame resist is essential. It really helps against DKs. You also get max stamina and magicka, which is really good for damage. The stamina helps because we're melee quite a lot as you're a warden. And then you get weapon and spell damage. On the live server, where I've obviously been playing this and showing it on stream, I use a Breton and I just change a glyph or two to get the same stats. So don't panic if you do have a slightly different race. Just change a glyph or two and you'll be fine. High Elf, Dark Elf, Breton, Argonian are kind of the ones that work really well for this build, but race will not make or break it in my opinion. Just Dark Elf is like the best in slots. For the attributes and kind of our stats, as you'll see on our back bar, we have 30,000 armor and we have loads of crit resist. And then you'll also see our sustain when we're in combat is almost 2,000, so we are really good sustain wise. Our damage wise, as you'll see, is we have 5,500 spell damage. So really good stats here, and just with the crit buffs, 25% crit chance. So a good set of stats, and these are always up when we're actually in combat. To achieve all of this kind of stuff, what we are actually using is a range of different sets that proc that stay up all the time to give us really good damage, really high health, really high sustain. But what's really important is that we do get these attributes right. You will see that our health on the back bar is 31,000, but on the front bar is 29,800. Why is that so important? Well, if you go to your skills and look at the Warden skill line, Winter's Embrace, there's a passive called Piercing Cold. When your health is below 30,000, you get 8% more damage. And what's key is your max health, not your current health. So your max health has to be below 30,000 health to get this damage boost. And if it's over 30,000 health, you lose the damage boost, but you get 12% block reduction, which is really good. So that's loads and loads of defense, and this is loads of damage. The issue is, how do you build for both? And what we're doing is we are manipulating a health glyph on a shield on the back bar to push our health over 30,000 defense, and then when we're on the front bar for damage, we have just under 30,000. To get this, 14 health was how I got this with 34 magicka and 16 stamina. You can put this stamina into magicka for more magicka if you wish and more damage, but I think this is the sweet spot having tried it and just played it extensively. It's also worth noting if you do CP and no CP, so go between Battlegrounds and stuff, to get the health right, I would recommend going to your fitness, take out the Hero's Vigor, which you're probably going, Dan, why would you do this? But hear me out. You then go to a respec shrine, and at this shrine, you then go to your back bar, you put your attributes in with toughness on, so use your Betty 2 times to proc it, and your health should just be over 30,000. So when you're on the back bar in no CP, this is what it will look like. Because the only thing that buffs our health CP wise is that node we just took out. And as long as your health is just over 30,000 on the sword and shield bar, when you switch to the front bar, you are now below 30,000. And so I found 14 was the sweet spot. And then all you do is you go back into your champion points and you put it back on. So that might seem a bit complicated, and you can comment below if you have any questions how to get this right. But that's really important. I can't stress that enough. For the Wonderstone, you have essentially 3 choices. Lover is the most damage. If you're playing in CP, the Lover is the best. People are slightly tankier, you need the penetration. If you're playing in no CP, I would go and swap this, and I'd recommend using the Atronach. You're probably going, why the Atronach, Dan? Well, when you're in no CP, what happens often is you lose some sustain. It doesn't seem like it, but you do actually lose quite a bit of sustain just because of all the passives. So this extra recovery here is really, really nice. It brings your base regen to over 2,200, which is really, really good for no CP. But you can kind of go between the two. If you are somebody, though, who does kind of, you're new to Magicka Warden, that I would recommend start with the Atronach, get used to the build, get used to kind of how to combo, and then add the Lover or the Apprentice for what you need. Apprentice is damage and healing, the Lover is most damage. As with the kind of consumables, we are using Citrus Fillet. This gives us max health, max magicka, and magic recovery. This is the best in slot food for this build. If you can't afford this, use Witch Mother's Potent Brew. It is almost the same as this, slightly worse, but it's a lot cheaper, so you can use that as a kind of workaround. Potion wise, we have Tri Potions with health, magicka, and stamina. They cover all bases. And if you want to run more specialized things like immovability and so on, they are great for 1vx or for a Cyrodiil. Do give those a go. Now I want to go through the skills and show you how this all works, and I want to touch upon quickly why we're a vampire. So vampire in this current patch, it has lots of negatives. Your skills cost more, you take more fire damage, it's bad. You do, however, get undeath. Now undeath has been nerfed. It used to be 30%, now it's 15%. And it's a bit confusing with how it looks. Basically, when you're at max health, you get 1% damage reduction, which is bad. But as you take more and more damage, the damage reduction you get increases. And this applies to existing dots on you, to new damage coming in, so it becomes a defensive set that just turns itself on, essentially. The way to show this, if people are curious, is Blood Frenzy. You take damage. So when we put this on, you will see that this will dynamically scale. So it's at 1% at the moment, now it's 2%, because our health is going down, then 3%, and so on. When you're around 30% health, this is about 11-12% damage reduction. So what that actually means is that this is counteracting executes. So the best way to view Undeath nowadays is that it's an anti-execute passive. It is a really, really, really good thing to have. So you will see I've turned it off. We've got 36% health and we had 10% damage reduction. It is really, really good. For context, this is basically Buffer of the Swift, which is a defensive set. So long and short of it is, be a vampire. It is still worth it. I've used this on live and this is still significantly better. Even I've tried it with and without, and I preferred it with. As you can probably gather, this is recorded on the PTS just to save me some gold. But I have tried this on live and I've shown it on stream already. For the skills, we are going to buff up quickly just to show you the stats, because it gives you an idea what you can expect sort of damage wise when you buffed up. So stat wise, we have a 10,100, almost 10,200 spammable with a dot and chilled. What's nice with this chilled is that this chilled is always applied and it's an extra 800 damage. So this spammable, when we're actually doing that damage to people, is essentially about 12,500 per hit, like tooltip, which means this is one of the best spammables you'll get. This is a really good spammable for Warden. And this is only possible because of this Piercing Cold passive and the fact that we're using an Ice Staff. If you use an Ice Staff, you get no damage boost, but the Destructive Reach turns into a spammable. It's normally 4,000 damage, but it doubles. So you'll see when we're in combat, this skill is typically about 5,600. It's double that because we're using an Ice Staff, which is why we can make this work. And because of this passive that I said earlier, this helps fix the lack of the Destruction Staff damage passive. We are then using Deep Fissure. So Deep Fissure is a delayed burst ability. It's almost 13k with a 17,000 follow-up, almost 18. Huge damage. We've got Fetter Infection, which is damage over time, and Minor Vulnerability, so more damage, debuff, great skill. Bird of Prey, which is our movement skill, also Snare Immunity, and Minor Berserk, which is more damage whilst it's on. Just 3 damage, great movement. Now, you're probably noticing this RB, I don't use Vampire. I normally go between 3 skills. If I'm in Cyrodiil and I'm playing in a group play, I will probably go Shimmer and Shield for to be selfish. This gives you more ultimate, which is more Dawnbreakers, but it's also range, like just damage reduction. People can't hit you when this is up. It's great against sorcerers. If I'm playing in a duo and I want to heal other people, Living Trellis is fantastic. This will heal you, it will heal allies. You can put it on you, you can put it on them, you can spam cast it. It's really good. Alternatively, if you don't want to use this, Lotus Blossom is like that middle ground. You get more crit chance, which is more damage basically. You also get more healing as you do damage, so it's an offensive heal. You damage people, you heal. This is really good. I kind of go between this and Living Trellis personally. For the ultimate, we are using Dawnbreaker. It's almost 19,000 with a 21,000 dot. So you can see all of this combined is a lot of damage. Back bar wise, we are using the following. We have Ice Fortress, Armor Buff, Healing Soul, 14,000 burst heal almost. It's regen and it's also healing. This is a scribed skill. So to make this, we are using in the Willed Soul, Healing, Druid's Resurgence, and we use Vitality. This gives you a good burst heal with some resource sustain back, and also Major Vitality, which is more healing. Again, this can be done on others, it can be done on you. This works really well because what this does is means that we don't have to run Polar Wind, because Polar Wind only works with high health, and we can't have high health and have the ice damage boost. So you have to sacrifice something. So this is the Polar Wind heal for context. So I will buff up just to show you the same. So we're fully buffed. The Polar Wind is 10,700. This is 13,800 plus Major Vitality. You could still use Polar Wind. That's an option. And you do have this heal over time, which is nice. And it heals allies. So this is an option if you don't have this scribe skill. We then have Vigor, which is 21,400. So loads of healing and armor, which is just great skill. We then have Blue Betty for more damage and just sustain. And a big tip is that if you spam cast this, you get a small heal because of the Warden passives. It also gives you a small cleanse, it gives you a slight damage boost, and whilst it's on, it also gives you sustain. It's a great skill. We then have a stun, which is a scribe skill, repelling throw. If you do not have access to scribing, you cannot get a stun on this build. It's really, really hard. For this scribe skill though, what are we using for that? We are using the shield throw, which is one-hand sword and shield. We use knockback, which pushes people back, like Templar Spear. Great skill in Battlegrounds, knocking people off walls, knocking them into just off high places, killing them with full damage. Great in Cyrodiil. We then use Class Mastery. So as a Warden, this creates an area under the target, and if they can be stunned, it will then stun them, and they'll get charmed then to run towards you. If they can't be stunned, you get resources back, which generally is what happens because we stun them with the hit. So this gives us sustain back, but it also acts as a big snare. And then we then use Cowardice because most heals in this game are based on essentially damage and damage boost healing. So we reduce the damage, we reduce the healing. So Cowardice is a great way to do this. Or you can use Evasion for just more AoE reduction for yourself. I personally prefer Cowardice. And what that looks like is that when you throw this big blue circle is a snare. So it's a really good snare to stop people running away. If you don't have Class Mastery yet, you can change this and use Druid's Resurgence as a stopgap, which is a really good option. And I use this as a stopgap if I don't have the Mastery. So I've tried it with both. If you don't have access to Scribing at all, what can you run instead? The easy option is go down to Living Trellis. I have built into this build a set that does give us a stun anyway, but having the stun means we can get damage from it instead. So the stun is better, but this can be a stopgap if you lack scribing. And as I said, if you don't have scribing, you can use Polar Wind instead of that for the burst heal. So you'd still have decent healing. This will still work. The scribe skills just make it much better. So I'm just going to put those back on so I don't forget. And then for the ultimate, as you can see, we are using Northern Storm. So just quickly buff up with the Northern Storm. The Northern Storm's on the back bar and the damage carries over to the front bar, so it's 8,300. So when we turn this on the back bar, although it looks slightly lower here, it does update. So you're best buffing up so you get an idea of what it would actually do to a player. So it's 8,300, it's a lot of damage. And then when you actually use it, you also get more damage from this again. So it will actually go up to essentially 8,700, almost 9,000 fully buffed. It is really, really good. So yeah, really, really good ult with her. I appreciate the skills are slightly more complicated this way around because of scribing, but that's how you can really like mix it and match it if you have or don't have the system. The final thing now is to go through the sets. But before I do so, if you like the videos and the builds and stuff, then do comment below, let me know. I'd love to know what you think. And if you haven't done so, do subscribe so you stay up to date with the channel. I've got much more planned. And just a massive thanks to all of the YouTube and Patreon members who get exclusive access, early content and much more. There's details down below. With this though, what are we doing set-wise? The sets are really interesting. So we are using the Master's Eye Staff. It is, in my opinion, made for Magicka Warden. It gives you 600 weapon and spell damage, which is insane. It also reduces the cost, which is awesome. And why this is such a good set is that when we're on the front bar, our spell damage is 4,600. Doesn't seem that high. When I use that buff alone, it's 5,400. It adds almost 800 spell damage. The higher your base, so if you use like the Apprentice, you'd get slightly more, even still from this 600. This is like almost 900 spell damage, and if it's perfected, it's an extra 100 on top. So this 2-piece set is basically 1,000 spell damage fully combined. It is such a strong 2-piece, so you want to run this. This is what makes that Ice Magicka Warden archetype work. I then use Sharpened and Glyph-wise, whatever you like. Foulness is really good, or double dot poisons. Me personally, I use double dot poisons. For the back bar, we are using Wretched Vitality. Now, Wretched Vitality, I have 4 pieces on the front bar, which is going to sound a bit weird. So when we go to the front bar, we have 4 pieces on here. We go to the back bar, we have 5 pieces, not 6. So I'll show you how this works. So it's only the sword. That's really important to note, okay? But this is sustain. I then have willpower, and this is where it gets really weird. So on the back bar, our willpower turns onto 3 pieces. But on the front bar, we only have 2 pieces willpower. This helps us maximize the damage whilst we're using the Master's Ice Staff. I will show a superstar in a moment to show you how to load this out because it is complicated, but this gives you the best amount of stats. If you do it the way that I'm going to show here, you get this extra damage on the front bar, which is awesome, whilst there's extra like max magicka, so more damage. And on the back bar, because we turn on 3 willpower, we get more damage, which is more healing. So this is the best way to build this. It is worth noting for the shield, you have to have health. This is like non-negotiable. So if you don't have health on your shield, put it on there. Like this is how this build works. I did try with Triglyphs, but it gets quite messy very quickly. Triglyphs can work, but health's just easy. And trait-wise, whatever you get, I got Divines on the live server, that's what I kept here, but I would personally use Impen or Reinforced. Talking of the live server, this part of the video is on the PTS, hence why I have so much money. I don't have that much normally. I then use Knarr's Nightmare set. This is a really good set. At 5 stacks, an undodgeable hand hits the target. So what happens is when we do light attacks, we put this debuff on the target and we get 5 of them. A big hand pops out and does damage. If they can be stunned, it will stun them. If they can't be stunned, it will do damage. If you can't see the stacks because you're on console, you do have this buffs and debuffs here. Just turn this on. This is what I normally use. So just a little tip there and permanent off. And that way, when you do it, you can see that debuff on the skeleton just filling up. And then at 5, it goes off. What makes this a really, really nice set is that this is undodgeable. So you cannot dodge this. And then when we fully buff up with the Masters, you'll see this is like 15,000. It is insane how much damage this does. So it's 16,000 damage. It is really, really high damage. We use a heavy helmet, Impen, and we use a medium shoulder. Now, if you can change this to Reinforced, I would, but I just didn't have Transmutes on live, so that's why I left it Impen, just to mimic what I had on live. Triglyph on the head, the chest, and the legs. For the chest, I use Trainee, just more max health. I then have a light sash, Wretched Vitality, medium hands, Wretched Vitality, heavy legs, Wretched Vitality, medium feet, Wretched Vitality. Magicka on all the small pieces, so shoulders, waist, hands, and feet are magicka, and on the big pieces, as I said, it's tri-stat. For the jewelry, we have necklace and ring of willpower, infuse spell damage, recovery, And we have a mythic of choice. Marken, Saint and Seducer, Sea Serpent Coil, any of those are great. So any of these work really well. Marken gives you damage and armor, really worth using. The damage is low on the front bar because of how we've built this, there's no way around that. But we get more armor on the back bar. So we switch to the back and we get the armor here and more healing. So this gives us more healing still. You could use Malakath. Malakath gives you less crit damage, but you have more basic damage. So this is still worth using for this build. I've used both and I do like this on my build. If you don't have those or you want to try something different, Saint and Seducer is phenomenal. This is really worth using if you can get this. Sea Serpent is also great. It's just a bit slow for me personally, but you can obviously mix these as you see fit for what you need. For the Superstar, just showing it all together now, this is how it's all loaded out. So if you want to, just take a screenshot, so on. This is where you need to put all the stuff, but this is how the build looks. And as I said, the action up Mondays can be the lover if you want to go for CP. But yeah, that's the build. If you get any questions about the build, let me know in the comments down below. I know this video is slightly longer than usual, but I had to get across the importance of that health manipulation we're doing and also those scribe skills and just how it all works. If you do like my content, then likes, comments, shares are really appreciated. And more importantly, do subscribe to stay up to date with the channel. And I want to say a massive thanks to all of the YouTube and Patreon members who get exclusive content, early access to videos and much more. If you want to support myself there, there's details down below. But as always, I'll catch you next video or stream. So thanks for watching guys, take care and bye!